Hello and welcome to today's broadcast. I'm Davcat or Davina, and here we work to defeat fascism, uphold democracy, and I respond to whatever's trending on Twitter. Elon Musk's clever purchase of a popular social media platform for the purpose of subverting it and giving right-wing views and opinions more traction. Hey, I'm here to make sure it has less traction and to give a more accurate, factual-based narrative more traction instead. So we're talking today about Trump being associated with Epstein. It's something the right wing can try and hide from, but they can't because the evidence is too powerful to ignore for at least decent people who aren't welded eyes shut from overconsumption of Fox News right-wing media bubble type nonsense. So let's have a little listen to this report, which uses footage of Trump and Epstein.
That Jeffrey Epstein was running a sex trafficking ring in the early 2000s that included underage girls as young as 14 years old.
Donald Trump in 2002 said of Epstein, he's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side.
He routinely spoke fawningly of Jeffrey. He admired Epstein's lifestyle.
Your daughter, she's beautiful. Can I say this? A piece of it.
She's actually always been very voluptuous.
What does Tiffany have of Marla's?
She's got Marla's legs. We don't know whether or not she's got this part yet.
You were playing tennis and you came off the court. Quote, look at that piece of I would love some of that. It so happened that Trump was referring to Cohen's then 15-year-old daughter, Samantha.
I had the impression that he was interested in younger women and that, women would age out for him.
Miss Teen Universe? Yeah, that's like giving Jeffrey Dahmer a cooking show.
I'll go backstage before a show, and everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. I standing there with no place.
Donald Trump making questionable comments about a young girl.
You going up the escalator?
He alleges he raped a girl when she was 13 years old.
Prince Andrew answering questions for the first time about his friendship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
I don't know Prince Andrew, but it's a tough story.
Trump has been photographed with Prince Andrew as far back as the year 2000.
Ghislaine Maxwell is accused of helping Epstein sexually abuse underage girls.
I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach, and I guess they lived in Palm Beach. But I wish her well.
You know about sexual predators and things like that. I mean,
you are one.
All right, I was going to say that, but it's true.
Wow, that's quite a damning compilation. And as we know, we're still having to address Trumpism and Trump, because even though there is so much evidence that he consorted with Jeffrey Epstein, was a close personal friend, shares his taste in beautiful women, and all of this other stuff, people are so subject to the fear-mongering. And when I say people, I mean conservatives. But look, there's a lot of far-left people who are racist as well. So let's not deny that, for starters. So racist people or people who initially start off without being racist and are fed a steady drip diet of invasion rhetoric. Similar rhetoric to that used by Hitler in his speeches, which Trump owned a collected copy of, called My New Order, collected copy of Hitler's speeches. He admitted as such to a journalist in 1995, who was following up on his first wife's assertion in their divorce proceedings that Trump kept a copy of Hitler's collected speeches on his nightstand. So, look, do we want someone like that, again, given the opportunity to hold America's national secrets in his hand so that he can once again transfer them to his bathroom, his ballroom, or to the pockets of whoever pays him the highest amount? And the answer, I think, is no. So there were a lot of people who tuned in to start with today, and I think they were drawn by those hashtags. And I'm sorry to have disappointed some of them, but possibly they were MAGA-y people looking for affirmation of Epstein's client list being more in line with their conspiratorial rhetoric about Hollywood elite and blood libel, to suggesting that that Donald Trump was actually a hero. They claim that he was a hero and he was doing so much to defeat child trafficking rings. And of course, that was not the case. Trump didn't oversee any notable reduction in child trafficking in this country or any other, and in fact was accused himself of trafficking a 13-year-old girl who withdrew who stepped away from her lawsuit shortly before the 2016 election, but had witnesses who had stepped forward to testify in her support of the argument that she had been raped by both Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein at the age of 13. So what else are we going to look at today? We will check what else is trending. Well, Harvard, of course, is trending because President Claudine Gay of Harvard has resigned due to a continuing pattern of unearthing an overly high amount of academic overlap between her work, her early writings from 1990 onwards, but people kept using software like Turnitin, which is an anti-plagiarism software, finding passages that shared overly high degrees of resemblance to each other. And the tricky part is that she was definitely targeted for irritating the wrong people by prevaricating too hard with regards to the issue of hate speech on campuses of the elite universities. And she wanted to retreat to a position where she said context matters. She's not going to condemn any particular utterances over other utterances. And some people were conflating a pro-Palestinian statement that can be interpreted by some people innocently. I'm speaking about the term "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." So some people will chant that as a support for autonomy in the region for people of Arabic descent and people who would call themselves Palestinian, who may have been forced to leave the region or felt intimidated to leaving various occupied territories and want to return. So there's other people who use that phrase with the intent of ethnically cleansing the Middle East of Jewish people. And so you can have some well-based suspicions of people who chant that phrase, but President Gay, former Harvard President Gay, Claudine Gay, was just trying to pin her loyalty to the First Amendment or to her university as a bastion of the First Amendment, to say you have to have more evidence than just if somebody's been chanting pro-Palestinian slogans to condemn them as participating in genocidal harassment. And it's a highly contentious issue. So she was definitely made a target, and particularly being a high-profile Black woman, because part of conservative opposition to a multi-pluralistic, multi-ethnic democratic society is them asserting that affirmative action is a net negative for American society. I don't agree with them, because affirmative action exists when you acknowledge the consequences of anti-Black activity, anti-Black exclusionary activity in positions of authority, positions of high status, and that's had a consequence of depriving young Black people of mentors in these fields, and that you have to make an effort to mitigate that very natural tendency to repeat patterns. And when those patterns have been patterns of racist behavior, racist, exclusionary, anti-Black behavior, making an effort is worthwhile. So they want to claim that it's always a net negative to do so, to have affirmative action, to try and for an institution to go out of their way to support and promote Black people or people of color or minority people. Affirmative action has actually mostly benefited white women because because I guess feminists have still encountered a lot of opposition, but there's been less organized pushback in reference to the amount of pushback high-profile, successful Black people often receive from ingrained racists who are glued to a behavior pattern and a perception pattern of being antagonistic towards Black excellence and disbelieving it and challenging it in any way. So, of course, Claudine Gay does point to in her farewell letter, she does point to the racial animus that she's experienced because people have been writing to her. And if you think all the people who've written to her to call for her resignation have been colorblind people, then you're sadly naive, because of course a successful Black woman with some evidence of perhaps academic contentious conduct would have received a lot of hate mail from people on the basis of their staunch resentment and antagonism towards people of color, and particularly Black people, and then particularly Black women, because some people operate along an emotional hierarchy of disparaging people in demographic subgroups that have a lower bar for activating disdain. And a lot of people feel better about themselves by putting other people down and by punching down at low-hanging fruit. And when the low-hanging fruit is low-hanging because of systemic patterns of disparaging and demeaning Black people, then yes, it's entirely predictable. All right, let's look and see what else is circulating at the moment about Epstein. Joe has a question and says, when is the list released? It's not a list of Epstein's clients, if that's your query. AP has run a fact check if you want to look that up for yourself. It's just a list of people who have been referenced in regards to his court cases. So some of those people who are listed victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Some of those people have been people who were on a flight log, which didn't necessarily go to Epstein Island or the island where, is it called St. John's Island? The island where Epstein was renowned for targeting his victims. So Epstein also had a private jet that he used to give rides to celebrities and wealthy people to cultivate relationships that would yield fruit for him in relation to increasing his own status and power and influence, because blackmail and pedophilia was one potent plank of his strategy to not only indulge his own basest impulses, but to compromise people. So thanks for asking me a question. What else do we have? All right. Yes. MAGA Nazis want us to believe that Trump went with Epstein to help save girls. Patently untrue. Trump has boasted in recorded settings, he's boasted on radio interviews that he, having bought the Miss Universe pageant and was able to judge Miss Teen Universe, or Miss Teen America, that he had access to changing rooms where young girls were getting undressed and he could just walk in and inspect them. And two former Miss Teen USA women came forward after the Access Hollywood tapes were released, and they felt they could disclose this in that cultural moment of Trump being on a hot mic declaring that he repeatedly indulges in sexually assaulting women and just grabs them by their genitals, that he can't help kissing beautiful women. It's like a magnet. He just kisses them. So having that confession be released during Trump's candidacy, during his presidential run in 2016, a lot of people came forward, including former Miss Teen USA people who said, yes, they were uncomfortable. They felt that Trump was inspecting them, and yes, he would violate the sanctity of the dressing room and come in while young girls were in various stages of getting ready for the competition. So some undressed. All right. During Ghislaine Maxwell's trial, a witness testified that Jeffrey Epstein drove her to Mar-a-Lago to meet Donald Trump when she was just 14 years old. So that was in November, December of 2021. And the witness went under a pseudonym, but that was not at a trial of Donald Trump. That was at a trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. Of course, since then, there's been a civil trial of Donald Trump for defaming E. Jean Carroll, who was a popular gossip columnist, advice columnist, and some decades ago. And she alleges that she accompanied Trump into a dressing room because he had invited her to help pick out a present for his girlfriend, and that he violently raped her in the dressing room of a Bloomberg changing room that was deserted at the time, except for them. And he was found liable for defaming her, and consequently found liable for sexual abuse of E. Jean Carroll and ordered to pay $5 million. He's been found liable for defaming her and for sexual abuse. And there's another trial coming up in which he's being tried again civilly for the remarks he made defaming E. Jean Carroll when he was president. So this is a related trial that will probably a jury trial also, and Trump will be asked to pay probably an even greater sum than $5 million, because defaming somebody when you're the president is using a very big, so Trump is on Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs. Let's have a look. Donald Trump hanging out on a prime. Donald Trump. There he is on the flight logs. I see this. That says Donald Trump, entry 310 and 311. Well, I guess you'll be hearing more about that on the nightly news as well, because that will be a story, I guess. Donald Trump on the Epstein flight logs. Did Epstein? And Bill Clinton is on the flight logs also to international locations such as Paris, Bangkok, and Brunei. Brunei being a small island ruled by the Sultan of Brunei, but it's international locations. And was Joe Biden on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet? Is he on the flight logs? No. All right. Oh, Trump's former attorney general, like very momentarily on Trump's to-do list to appoint to attorney general, except all of the Department of Justice higher-ups threatened to resign on that day when Trump was trying to effectuate a promotion for Jeffrey Clark to facilitate his attempted coup, his effort to overthrow the results of the election with a multi-pronged effort involving inviting everybody, his supporters, to the Capitol on January the 6th, trying to activate a section of the 12th Amendment that says if there's no clear winner of the election, then one delegate from each of the states will choose a president, and Republicans at that stage would have had 26 delegates to 24 Democratic delegates, because if you choose one delegate from each state, Republicans controlled the state legislatures in 26 different states. So that's 26 is more than 24. Trump would have been counting on the Republicans to then pronounce him as a second-term president. In contrast to the actual election results, he would have declared any protests about that outcome as being an insurrection and would have used the military to enforce that illegitimate outcome, that overthrown election, that overthrown system of democratic choosing a country. Because the electoral college system is an imperfect form of a democracy because it gives weight, undue, disproportionate weight to voters from smaller states with smaller populations, meaning states with higher relative agricultural land to settled areas, meaning places with a larger history of enslavement and subsequent rationalization of white supremacist rule over rationalized Black unworthiness. So, I mean, smaller population states with lots of agricultural land like Wyoming, etc., you can see that there is a sticky history of racist thinking that makes Donald Trump's candidacy more alluring, as he sets him up to be a champion of protecting white dominance and finding ways to ensure that people don't have affirmative action, that resources aren't given to American territories such as Puerto Rico, that instead of migration courts being given more resources to solve the problem of bottlenecked migration, that instead people's claims to be refugees are processed more expeditiously. Republican white supremacists will purposefully inflame that situation, deprive immigration courts of resources in order to maintain a fear-mongering narrative of perpetual invasion and takeover, by having migrants who are trying to then cross the border between points of entry because the process of being accepted as a refugee has become so congested as a result of Republican obstruction of solving the immigration backlog through depriving it of resources and efforts to streamline that situation. So Jeffrey Clark claims that Jeffrey Epstein material will be he's saying that he will be on, is he saying that Jeffrey Clark might be saying that he will be on Jeffrey Epstein's flight log? That's interesting. He's asking if he will be convicted before being found guilty in court. Fascinating. All right. And then, of course, Trump saying he didn't even know Prince Andrew, when it's very documented that he does know Prince Andrew and has a long-standing relationship with Prince Andrew. It's par for the course with Trump, who, when confronted with being supported by David Duke, the former head of the Ku Klux Klan, he'll say, I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about David Duke. Yes, you do. You've tweeted about him before. There's social media documentation of documenting your awareness of David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan. So what else has he said he doesn't know? He said he doesn't know anything about Hitler's speeches, even though he's already admitted he owned a book by Hitler. He said it was Mein Kampf. He said Marty Davis of Paramount gave it to him and that Marty Davis is Jewish. Marty Davis said, yes, I did give him a book of Hitler's collected speeches, but I'm not Jewish. I just thought he'd be interested. Trump, as it turns out, was very interested. He idolizes Hitler in the same way he very evidently idolizes a lot of dictators. Maybe we'll bring up that article where because Business Insider had I feel like I need to get a better internet connection so this is not spotty. I might have to ask for that from my Trump. All right. How is the flow of the Oh, look. This is going to be a good article. I can share it. It's from AP. It's just the internet. Well, I might go because it's not very super useful to be broadcasting if, well, we'll try one more time. Okay, so we're going to share a screen and the screen. Okay, share. Let's have a look. Okay. So Trump says he didn't know that his immigration rhetoric echoes Hitler, which is part of a broader pattern. He claims to have been a very stable genius, facing criticism for repeatedly harnessing rhetoric once used by Adolf Hitler to argue that immigrants entering the US illegally are poisoning the blood of our country. Trump insisted that he had no idea that one of the world's most reviled and infamous figures once used similar words. The Nazi dictator spoke of impure Jewish blood poisoning Aryan German blood in order to dehumanize Jews and justify the systemic murder of millions during the Holocaust. I never knew that Hitler said it, Trump told conservative radio host Hugh Hewitt on Friday, volunteering once again that he never read Hitler's biographical manifesto Mein Kampf. I know nothing about Hitler, he insisted. I have no idea what Hitler said other than what I've seen on the news. And that's a very entirely different thing than what I'm saying. Trump's assertion that he knows so little about one of the 20th century's most documented figures is notable for someone seeking the presidency, a role steeped in and shaped by history. But claiming ignorance, particularly when it comes to people who espouse racist or anti-Semitic rhetoric, is a tactic Trump has repeatedly deployed when aiming to distance himself from uncomfortable storylines. After he was endorsed by former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard David Duke during his 2016 campaign, Trump insisted that he had no knowledge of the white supremacist who had run for office numerous times and is described by the Anti-Defamation League as perhaps America's most well-known racist and anti-Semite. So just so you understand, I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? He told CNN's Jake Tapper in February 2016, I don't know anything about what you're even talking about with white supremacy or white supremacists. Asked if he would condemn the white supremacists supporting him, Trump said he would have to look at the group. I mean, I don't know what group you're talking about. He continued to repeat that assertion even after Tapper said he was referring to the KKK. So KKK, don't know what you're talking about. I can't denounce that. We don't know. No, that's racist. I don't know. Trump continuing to claim ignorance because he doesn't want to condemn it. He doesn't want to alienate his white supremacist supporters. Not that they're easy to alienate, because if you're a white supremacist, you already know you're not popular in a general sense. You have to kind of fabricate a popularity for yourself by secretly attending Ku Klux Klan meetings, if that's what you do, and finding kindred spirits online. I'm not saying it's the most niche interest in the world, because white supremacy has a lot of support to differing levels. Hiccup. All right. So Trump also pleaded ignorance about QAnon. He said he didn't know about it. I know nothing about it, he said during an NBC town hall. Nevertheless, he refused to rule it out as false. I don't know that, and neither do you. Wow. So nobody can refute QAnon, according to Trump. He doesn't know about it. They don't know about it. When he was asked to condemn the Proud Boy militia group, he said, I don't know who the Proud Boys are, after instructing the group during a presidential debate to stand back and stand by. They had T-shirts with that message printed on it after that debate. Stand back and stand by. Like, we heard you, Donald Trump. We are ready to fight for you. And fight they would. Many of them went to the Capitol on January the 6th to be the violent of Trump's insurrection plot, to be the boots on the ground part of activating the 12th Amendment clause of when a presidential candidate has not clearly won victory, pass it to delegates, one from each state in the House of Representatives. So the hope was that by delaying the vote counting on January the 6th, by making it contentious, by making either Mike Pence rule that some of the votes were unacceptable, or thus betraying his oath in office to uphold the Constitution, or by getting Senator Chuck Grassley to stand in for Mike Pence and do the same thing, refuse to certify Joe Biden's election victory. They hope to do the same thing, throw the confirmation of Joe Biden's victory into chaos, and then say we're activating this little known element of the 12th Amendment. Oh no, sorry, is it the 12th Amendment? Where's my copy of the Constitution? It must be in the other room, but we can always look it up. How are we going? Are there any comments? Oh, DJ's here. Hello, DJ. Pastor DJ, nice to see you. It has been a while. I'm just trying to look up what element of the Constitution it was, but you know what? We'll do that next. We'll do that next broadcast. If you're joining in late, you can hopefully rewind and watch. It's been a 33-minute broadcast if anybody wants to go back. So thank you to any replay viewers. Thank you to anybody joining us late. And we'll be back because it's my New Year's resolution to be more active in this very vital fight for our times, which is to uphold democracy and to mitigate against the forces that seek to erode and dismember it via appealing to the basest elements of human nature, the risk aversion strategies that can take hold of a person's psyche and break them. People that have become so resistant to evidence that they still are willing to overlook Trump's crimes because he is not only a white, wealthy man, he's a white, reportedly very wealthy man, according to his own account. And he's a champion of protecting white theft. institutions being able to direct more resources towards white farmers than black farmers, more FEMA aid to white people than people of color, prevent people from ever seeking to mitigate the violence and discrimination of the past by, say, investigating reparations or finding ways to introduce reform into the police force so that people's intuitive racist behaviors or institutionally encouraged racist behaviors can ever be wound back, because I know decent people overall want there to be less racism. They don't want to try and defend deaths in custody or chokehold deaths or deaths of police officers firing guns or killing people with tasers when they're fleeing from police interaction. People want a more just and inclusive society. It's just white people sometimes fear loss. And if the status quo was white dominance, then losing white supremacy feels like an unbearable loss, particularly to people consuming right-wing media, which inflates the danger to white people extraordinarily, for a reason, to increase political support for Rupert Murdoch's preferred candidates, who will give Rupert Murdoch tax breaks, subsidies, power and influence, etc. Rupert Murdoch, the owner of Fox News, used to be an Australian citizen, now an American citizen since the 1980s, and is very keen on influencing elections around the world in order to line his own pockets more profitably. So that's all from me for today. Thanks for joining in. And my challenge to everybody watching is to find ways to speak up in favor of President Biden and against presidential candidate, former President Donald Trump, because we are literally engaged in a good versus evil battle in which propaganda and hate-mongering, fear-mongering are all being used to undermine people's resolve to advocate for decency, to vote for the best candidate, to vote for the candidate who's actually taken action to protect America from destabilizing forces such as the inflationary push in significant part caused by Trump's friend Putin's imperialist, violent attempted conquest of Ukraine, war on Ukraine. And America has fared the best out of the G7 nations in relation to inflation. Inflation's been winding down. Some prices even fell recently. And the American employment rate has been very successful. The number of people, the percentage of the American population in the workforce has been higher. Oh, look, it's frozen. The screen's frozen. Why did it do that? Anyway, I'll just go and I'll work on my internet access. But thanks for dropping by, San Diego, and anyone else. That's an Anchorman quote. Au revoir. Take care of yourselves and find ways to speak up, because when the price of dissent grows high, because imagine all those Republicans who tried to speak up against Donald Trump and they've had their families threatened. When the price of dissent becomes high, to address that, you can increase the supply of dissent, because things are pricier when they are in short supply. So the more voices raised to condemn Trump, to support the Democratic Party, imperfect as it may be, for actually working to help the American people and not to advance the cause of various lobbyists for the ultra wealthy who want to diminish the power of workers to collectively organize and to advocate for decent wages and live and working conditions. People like the Koch brothers, Peter Thiel, who want to exercise an eroding thumb on the separation of church and state. They want to smush it back together in order to exercise a better billionaire control. They want Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court, eroding voting rights, eroding the rights of Black people to access the poll without being intimidated, being allowed to access water from people who can bring water and food to those who have been unfairly made to stand in line for hours, merely to exercise their constitutional right to vote in a democracy, in the democracy that governs their country. And we must always practice how we refute Republican dawads who say that America's a republic, not a democracy, because it's like saying, that's cake, it's not a dessert. America is a constitutional republic, which is a form of democracy whereby matters are determined not by every single person in America voting on every single new policy, but by democratically electing representatives who then streamline that process of making political decisions and governing this nation. So Gary says, thanks. Carrie is here and says, soft landing. Thank you. Thank you. It's such a delight to be broadcasting again. I hope to do it tomorrow. Ouch. These earbuds were not very comfortable. All right. Take care. Take care of your democracy, our democracy. Bye.